الذي خلقك ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلقك ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك في أي صورة ما شاء ركبك كلا بل تكذبون بالدين وإن عليكم لحافظين كراما كاتبين يعلمون ما تفعلون إن الأبرار لفي نعيم وإن الفجار لفي جحيم يصلونها يوم الدين وما هم عنها بغائبين وما أدراك ما يوم الدين ثم ما أدراك ما يوم الدين يوم لا تملك نفس لنفس شيئا والأمر يومئذ لله ثم ما أدراك ما يوم الدين ثم ما أدراك ما يوم الدين يوم لا تملك نفس لنفس شيئا والأمر يومئذ لله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد
أحسنت brother إبراهيم. إن شاء الله one more صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Sisters and brothers, just a few reminders before we start. The kids program is going to be upstairs inshallah, and our maqtal, our English maqtal, is going to be Friday at 10 p.m. here inshallah. We hope to see you guys there. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome our dear respected scholar Sayyid Ali Muswe with 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The discussion for tonight, it's going to be a more difficult discussion than what we typically are used to. When it comes to the issue of death, I think it's one of the most feared concepts and thoughts that can come to anyone. And it's something that if you look at national lines, ethnic lines, religious lines, every single human being on the face of this earth seems to fear death. And as much as they find it possible, they will avoid thinking about it. They will avoid speaking about it. They will avoid even reflecting about it. Tonight we want to open up this discussion of why is it that we should not fear death, and in fact it should be something that we look forward to, that we look at with eagerness. Now, when we look at the reasons why we as human beings are afraid of death, there's many reasons. But I wanted to mention 3 of those reasons tonight. The first reason that we fear death so much is that death is an unknown. Let's face it, when we think about what is going to happen to us after we die, yes, we have Quranic verses, we have ahadith, we have all of these things. But at the end of the day, we don't really know what's going to happen to us. And as human beings, one of the things that we fear is the unknown. Why is it that so many people, adults, even elderly, they are afraid of the dark? You put that 70-year-old man into a dark room, and they're going to start to imagine things, they're going to start to see things, they're going to become frightened. You're going to say, but you're 60, 70 years old. But it's the unknown. I don't know what's around me. And if you've ever been camping, especially in the summertime when there's all that noise in the woods, that effect is amplified. You have no idea what's out there. We as human beings, intrinsically, we fear that which we don't know. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2, and we're going to have to be brutally honest here, is that when we look across the board, at religious people even, at ourselves even, one of the things that we see, it's certain, is that in spite of the fact that we are religious, in spite of the fact that we do things for our akhirah, we are primarily living for this dunya. You're going to say, wait a minute, that's not fair because I'm a religious person, I pray, I fast, I give charity. We all do that, but if you really are honest with yourself, if you really look at the way that you give for your akhirah and the way that you act for this dunya, you will say that there is no comparison between these two. No comparison. I'll give an example. Whenever we have an opportunity for charity, imagine there's an orphanage that is being built and we have this golden opportunity to give in the way of Allah. How much do we typically give? Let's say that somebody makes 80,000, 100,000, 120,000 a year. Out of that grand total, how much do we typically give towards these causes? You'll usually see 50, 100, 200, 500, maybe 1,000 if it's a day of generosity. But when it comes to ourselves, when it comes to, for example, buying a car, and I'm looking at all of these different cars, or a home, I'm looking at the housing market, I want the absolute best. Yes, I could buy a $25,000 car, a $30,000 car, but there's that shiny one that's $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. What does this mean? It shows the reality inside of me that when I am looking at the akhirah, my akhirah is in reality my plan B. I plan on living in this dunya forever. We don't see it that way, right? We don't think this way, but that's the reality of it. When it comes to our acts of ibadah, I want you to go back to your college days, your high school days. Some weeks you would put 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 sometimes hours into going to classes, into studying for the different courses that you had. Why? Because if we do that, we believe that we are going to achieve a great deal of success in this world. But when was the last time that I spent 40 hours, 50 hours in any given week? Let's say it was summer break. I spent that much time working towards my akhirah. The idea is a foreign concept. 50 hours, what would I do? Spend all of that time praying and maybe reading some books and reflecting and reciting Quran? No way. This shows us that our primary plan, our primary idea in this dunya is that I am going to live in this world forever. I want to be as comfortable as possible. And that world, it's my plan B. Inshallah, I'll send a little bit over, just in case, so that I'll have something over there, so that God won't be angry with me. This is the reality. One time a man comes to Abu Dhar. Abu Dhar was one of the great companions of Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen. He comes to Abu Dhar, he says, Ya Abu Dhar, why is it that in spite of the fact that we are believers, we're Muslims? Why is it that we have this disinclination, this fear in regards to death? You know what Abu Dhar says to him? He turns to him and he says the following. He says, it is because you have built up your worldly life and you have ruined your akhirah. And then he says that, and you dislike to go from a place that is built up, it is beautiful, it is comfortable, to a place of ruin. Now, of course, this tradition, inshallah, it doesn't apply to us because we haven't ruined our akhirah, but the principle here, the idea that Abu Dhar is giving to me and you, it's the same. He's saying that if you had built up your akhirah more than you had built up this dunya, then you wouldn't feel that fear of going over there. You'd be eager. Imagine that you have two homes. One of them is a tiny, very broken down hut in the middle of the woods under maybe a bridge. and you're forced to live there for a period of time, but you have another home. It's a palace. It has servants. It has fountains. It has all of these beautiful things. Would you not be eager to go from that shack under the highway to the palace? Of course we would. That's reason number 2, that we are not really building up our akhirah. Number 3, it comes down to the way that we have been taught about death. That when we were children and our parents wanted to teach us, or the masjid wanted to teach us about death, how did they teach us about death? It was the scary place that if you do this sin and this sin and this sin, then on the first night of the grave, the scorpions come out, and the vicious beasts come out, and the snakes come out. And by the way, these are all things that Middle Eastern people are very scared of. If you show a Middle Eastern person a snake, a scorpion, they're going to pass out. This is how they described death for us. And so we've associated the process of dying as a very frightening thing. And it's this place where Allah is just waiting to punish us. And so we do something very predictable. And that is that we pretend as if death doesn't exist. We ourselves, we see people dying, don't we? We sometimes go with them to the graveyard, accompanying them. We are placing them in the grave sometimes. And yet, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself that I am never going to die. We know we're going to die, but practically speaking, we're saying, no, that's something for other people. I'm going to live in this world forever. You know, one of the pieces of advice that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam gave us, Allah Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, he said to us that you should die before you die. What does that mean? Sometimes people, they are so worried about the akhirah that they die an early death. That's not what it's saying. What it is saying is that when it comes to the issues of this dunya, when you have all of these hopes that I'm going to achieve all of these things in this world, and we forget about the akhirah, Rasulullah is saying that you need to crush those inordinate hopes, those very lofty hopes which are not going to benefit you in this dunya. Of course, you should have great hopes, you should work very hard, you should enjoy all of the blessings of this dunya. Islam doesn't say that you shouldn't. But you should realize that this dunya is a temporary place. We're going to be here for a short period of time, and then we go into eternity. We go into the akhirah. What is it that I really need to do here? Let me crush all of those hopes that are not going to benefit me in this dunya or the akhirah. That's number 1. Number 2 is that when we look at the world around us, do not ever make the mistake of thinking that you are going to live in this world forever. The way that we live, it's as if that's what we believe. The homes that we build, the cars that we buy, we're getting more and more and more comfortable in this world. We should never forget the fact that we are travelers in this world. You know, there was a sheikh, he was staying at a hotel with a companion, with a friend. And he turned to his friend and he said, by the way, I have a suggestion for you. The friend said, what is it? He said, why don't we start to renovate this hotel room? Let's bring in really nice tile. We'll lay the tile on the floor and we'll bring in really nice carpeting. We'll put the carpeting in. We'll buy a deluxe bed. And you know, these beds now, they have these things called chillers. It actually keeps the temperature at the optimal, I don't know what it is, 68 degrees. He says, let's do all of these things. Let's really renovate this hotel room. His companion starts to laugh. He says, why in the world would we renovate this hotel room when we're going to be leaving it in a few days? The Shaykh, he says, that is exactly the metaphor of this dunya. And when you ask those that have reached the age of 80, how long did it feel in this world? How long was your life? They're going to say, I swear it was like the blink of an eye. It was like the blink of an eye, it's gone. Inshallah, Allah can prepare us for this type of a life. Now, the question that comes here is that should we be afraid of death? Because we've all seen the scary Quranic descriptions, we've all seen the ahadith. So should we be afraid or no? Did we get it wrong? The answer is that it depends. And I'm going to give you the example. I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, but imagine that you have an exam that is coming up in high school or university. And because you are a procrastinator, just like me, you haven't been doing anything in order to get ready for that exam. The months have gone by, the weeks have gone by. Suddenly you look and tomorrow, it's final exam day. How are you going to feel? You're going to feel panicked. You're going to feel scared. You're not ready for this. It's not your time yet. You need a few more days. You're even thinking about pulling the fire alarm, doing something. Maybe the teacher, I could slash his tire or something. There's that fear and trepidation. But for that student that was ready, they spent all of those weeks, all of those months preparing themselves, getting ready. They're going to walk in calm. Everything is okay. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib in the Nahj al-Balagha, he actually describes how it feels for the one that is not ready to die. How it feels for the one that has been living for this dunya primarily. He hasn't been thinking about his akhirah. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he describes something, it's as if he's standing there. That individual, he is on his deathbed. He is dying, and all of his relatives have surrounded him, and Amir al-Mu'mineen is there looking at him. He's describing this situation. The eloquence of this man. Imam Ali alayhi salam, this is what he says. He says that whatever they were ignoring them has befallen them. The separation from this dunya, from this world, that they thought themselves safe has come to them, and they have reached that which they were promised. And then Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says that whatever has befallen them, it cannot be described. I want you to put yourself in the position of this individual. The end moment of life has come. You know it. You're lying on that bed. The process of death is taking place. It's a gradual process. The Imam is saying that how that individual feels is so horrible because of that lack of preparation that I can't even describe it to you properly. I can't tell you how that individual is feeling. It's so horrible. And then the Imam, he continues. He says, the pangs of death, the body shutting down, and the grief for losing this dunya have surrounded him. It's amazing that the Imam, he mentions two things, not one. He says, number one, it's the body shutting down, which has its own issues and pain. But he says that alongside the body, what is also bothering this individual is the fact that he knows that he's being separated from the thing that he loves the most. Because for 80 years he loved this world. This is all that he wanted. This is all that he worked for. Now he feels that it is being pulled away from him, everything that he worked for. Then the Imam continues. He says, consequently, their limbs become languid and their color goes pale. You know, these arms that we have, strong, the legs that we have that allow us to go from one place to another quickly, this rosy color of health, that reddish hue that you have, the Imam is saying that the body begins to feel weak and heavy. The color begins to fade away gradually. And then the Imam, he continues that then death increases its domination over them. This process of dying, it continues. Such a person is barred from the faculty of speech. What happens? Suddenly that individual, he's not able to speak anymore. And he is surrounded with all of his relatives. They're watching him. But the Imam, he says that even though he can't speak anymore, he lies in front of his family, seeing with his eyes, hearing with his ears, with a mind still sound. He wonders, what did I do with my life? How did I waste my years? My brothers and sisters, put yourself in the position of that individual. You are thinking about those 50, 60, 70 years. You know that you are now leaving this dunya and you're wondering to yourself, why did I do those things that I did? Why didn't I spend that time more wisely? And then the Imam, he continues with this. It goes on that then the individual, he loses the ability to hear. He is still able to see. He loses the ability to hear, and this process continues until he passes away, and his relatives, they take that body, they place it within the earth, and then the Imam says they forget about that body. Sometimes I drive past these cemeteries that we have. 10 years have passed, 15 years, 20 years since that individual passed away. Nobody is visiting them. The graveyard is completely empty. Those that we love the most, of course, they're going to visit on the first day, the first week, the month. But as the years go by, we're going to be forgotten until nobody is going to remember us on this earth. And the only thing that is going to remain for me and you is the actions that I have performed in this world. Now, this is the description of that individual that was not ready. That individual that was living primarily for this world. What about for the one that was preparing himself for that exam, for that day? We have other traditions. You see, whenever you see any of these traditions, know that they are for a specific situation. These other traditions that we have are so beautiful. It makes you eager that what is going to wait for me on the other side? The first tradition is from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, where the Imam, he says that when it was asked from him, there's a verse in the Holy Quran that says لَحُمُ الْبُشْرَى فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. The Imam was asked, Ibn Rasulillah, what is the meaning of this verse of the Quran? That it says, for them is good news in this world and the next. Do you know what the Imam says? He says that at the moment of death, when the believer passes away, the first people that he or she are going to see is going to be the messenger of Allah and Amirul Mu'mineen, and they are going to give them the glad tidings of paradise. Imagine that first moment of death. You have just been separated from your loved ones. Who do you see? You see that who you love the most in this world. You see the messenger of God. You see Amirul Mu'mineen. You see the Ahlul Bayt. And they tell you that you passed that exam. You passed. From this point on, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a world without any suffering. In another narration, it was asked from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Somebody asked him the question, how does it feel in that moment of death when the angel of death, it extracts the soul from the body? Now, the Ahlul Bayt, they're trying to explain something to us that is otherworldly. It's really impossible for them to explain because the experience is unlike anything we have ever had. But the Prophet, he says that the feeling that you get in that first moment of death when the angel has taken your soul, it is the feeling similar to when you breathe in that beautiful fragrance of a bouquet of flowers. I don't know if you've ever had that, a really fragrant bouquet in the springtime, and it's a really varied arrangement with different flowers. And when you put that bouquet to your nose, you breathe in, it gives you a feeling of relaxation, it gives you a feeling of joy. You know, these days they have aromatherapy now. You can buy the oils and you can actually dispense it into the house for that same feeling. The Holy Prophet is saying that the feeling in that moment of death, that is how it is going to feel. It's going to be this feeling of relief and joy and vitality. Now, I wanted to go into the world of what happens when we enter into the barzakh. Because we all know that when the angel of death, he comes, and I know that most people are very afraid of the angel of death. Sometimes they'll even insult the angel of death. They'll say he's very ugly, he's this, he's that. He's not ugly, he's a beautiful angel like all of the angels of God. But at that moment when the angel of death comes, what he does is he liberates your soul from your physical body. He takes that soul and he separates it from the physical body, and you enter into the world which is known as the barzakh. Now you might be wondering, what is the barzakh? After this world, we are to enter into the next world, which is the barzakh. And we remain in the barzakh for a period of time until the day of judgment. And when the day of judgment comes, we again enter into that world. It's going to be another world other than the barzakh. When we enter into the barzakh, we receive another body. It is known as the barzakhi body. And that body that Allah is going to give to me and you, it is similar in some ways to the body that we have in this world, but it is more powerful. It is more able. Meaning that if in this world my hearing, my sight, my ability to move, it's a little bit difficult here, right? If I want to go from one place to another, I feel a heaviness in my body. When you receive that barzakhi body, that new body, there is a sense of vitality, there is a sense of energy and strength. And you are able to go places in a way that this body was not capable of. You are able to see things, to hear things that these ears and these eyes were not able to see or hear. The barzakh, my brothers and sisters, it's a dunya just like this dunya. Just like we sit here, we socialize, we speak to one another, we have different groups. The barzakh is going to be exactly the same for those who have done good. People are going to gather, they're going to socialize, they're going to laugh, they're going to enjoy. There are different enjoyments, things to eat, things to see. The problem is that when we are trying to understand the barzakh, it's difficult for us to understand it. Why? Because it's a completely different creation of Allah. The example that I wanted to give tonight, imagine if you find a baby in a womb. It's in the womb of his mother, and you go to that baby and somehow you're able to communicate to the baby. I don't know how. Somehow. You say to the baby, baby, I want to tell you about the world outside of the womb. It's this really beautiful world. When you come out, you're going to have this thing called the body. You're going to get legs. You're going to be able to run around. There are these beautiful, vast mountains. There are these beautiful oceans with all of these creatures inside. There is something called eating that you're going to enjoy. You take these things, food, and you place it in your mouth, and it feels good. And with that same mouth, you're going to conversate with people. You're going to speak with people. You're going to socialize. There's something called light. You're going to have eyes through which you can actually see this world. That baby would look at you and say you're crazy. Because all the baby has known is what? The darkness of the womb. Doesn't understand any of these concepts. What are you talking about? My brothers and sisters, the world of barzakh, It is more wonderful. It is more majestic than anything our eyes have ever seen in this dunya. The enjoyments which we will receive in that world are things which we cannot imagine from this worldly perspective. And when the akhirah is created, when we go to the day of judgment, paradise, that is something that even from the perspective of the barzakh, it is so wonderful that no eye has ever been able to see, no mind has ever been able to conceive it. You see, the reason why we fear death is that we come from a very limited perspective. We think that this is all that there is. We don't realize that this journey to becoming closer to Allah, it's going to continue. It's not going to end. But again, just like with everything, there is a condition. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he's told us that the barzakh for you is either going to be one of the gardens from the gardens of paradise, or it's going to be one of the pits from the pits of hell. It depends on our actions. That if we have more sins, even though we might have been believers, then there is going to be a process of purification in the barzakh. We are going to go through those punishments that we learned about when we were children, in order that we can be purified, that when the day of judgment arrives, we can go before Allah with a purified state. Here, some people will ask, why is it that there is this punishment in the barzakh? Why is it that we are even punished in the hellfire? Because we know that Allah doesn't need to punish us, does He? What benefit is there to Allah for punishing me? If I sin, I'm damaging my own soul. I'm hurting myself. Why is it that in the barzakh we have been warned that the shafa'ah of the Ahlul Bayt cannot reach you there? If you've sinned, you haven't done tawbah, there is the process of purification. Why is it that that is there? Why is there that hell exists? My brothers and sisters, the issue of hell, and we have to understand it properly. Hell can be likened to a hospital. Allah never punishes because He just wants to punish. He doesn't punish because He's angry at you on a personal level. He punishes because He has to, because of the sins that we have committed. Why? What is a sin? A sin is any negative aspect, any negative trait that we commit, and we commit to the point that it becomes part and parcel of who we are. I'll give you an example. Imagine that you have someone that has arrogance within themselves. They're an arrogant person. Of course, Allah could forgive that arrogance, and He could say, I'm going to put you in paradise. There's a problem here. Imagine if that arrogant person enters into paradise, or a jealous person is placed into paradise. What would happen to paradise? That paradise would become hell for all of the people there. Because that arrogant person, it's become part and parcel of who they are. They will wage arrogance upon all of the inhabitants, their neighbors, everyone who is in paradise. They will ruin their time. If someone is jealous, all of these different traits, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has to show us that this arrogance that you waged, these arrogant acts, the way that you hurt others, the way that you oppressed others, I want to show you the effect, the consequences of the arrogance that you have within you. The hellfire or the punishment of the barzakh, it is the manifestation of those traits that you have within you. And once you realize how bad it is, how disgusting it is, how much you hurt those around you, that is when you will actually separate those traits from who you are. You will become that purified individual. And so this is one of the things, we should never be afraid of death from an illogical perspective. We should always see it as a more beautiful world, but there is a condition, and the condition is that we have to live our lives properly, and we have to prepare ourselves before that day comes, inshallah. When we look at the members of the Ahlul Bayt, we find that the perspective that they had on death was such a different perspective than the perspective that we have. Tonight is a night that is dedicated to the Shahada of Qasim, who was the son of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. He had left behind this son by the name of Qasim, and he was a very young boy at this point in time. He wasn't that old. He might have been 10 or 11 years old. On the eve of Ashura, when he hears all of the men, they are pledging themselves to Imam Hussein. They are saying, Ya Imam, we will sacrifice ourselves for you. We will fight to the last drop of blood. It doesn't matter what happens to us. When he sees all of this happening, he turns to his uncle. He says, Ya Imam, will I also be amongst those who will be martyred tomorrow? The Imam, he turns towards this beloved nephew of his. He says to him, what is your view of death? How do you see death, my young son? Qasim, he turns and he says, oh my uncle, I see death as being sweeter than honey. This is the family of Ali Muhammad, that when they see what awaits, they are seeing the reality. They're not fooled by the physicality of this dunya. When Imam Hussein, he hears this, he begins to weep and he says, then you will be amongst those who are going to be martyred tomorrow, Ya Qasim. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
صلى على محمد وآل محمد. Just a reminder, inshallah, that the kids program is going to be upstairs for those that want their children to be going upstairs right now. ثانية لحب الزهراء صلى على محمد وآل محمد. ثالثة لتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمن صلى على محمد وآل محمد. Just those nightly reminders, inshallah, before we enter into the majalis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. These tears are an opportunity, like we always say every single night. We want to make sure that if we're able to shed tears for the masa'ib of Ahlul Bayt, specifically Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, that we use these tears to change our beings, to become better individuals and focus on our relationship more after these majalis finish, inshallah, after Ashura, to make a change within our lives, inshallah. Another advice that the ulama give us is that if you can't shed tears for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, try doing istighfar before you begin the majalis. They say that this can help soften the heart to shed more tears, and if you still can't shed tears, at the very least put your head down in mourning and in grief, and inshallah you'll get the same reward as if you were shedding tears for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة وموضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, our beloved Holy Prophet. and the Ahlul Bayt. It was in your homes that Allah blessed us with guidance and revelation, and upon you descend the angels day in and day out. Everybody together, جميعا. يا حبيبي يا حسين نور عيني يا حسين يا حبيبي يا حسين نور عيني يا حسين. Our beloved Hussein, light of our eyes, Hussein, Ya Rahmatallahi al-Wasi'a, Hussein. O vast mercy of Allah, Hussein, sallallahu alayka, Ya Aba, Ya Abdullah, sallallahu alayka, Ya Madlum, sallallahu alayka, Ya ayyuha al-shaheed fi Karbala. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, our beloved Imam al-Hussein, our beloved oppressed Imam, the Imam who was slaughtered by the shores of the Euphrates, while his mouth was dry of thirst. Tonight, dear brothers and sisters, is the night of Al-Qasim, the son of Imam Al-Hassan, the brave boy, the brave young teen who sacrificed his own life for the cause of his Imam. A blessed poet describes Qasim regarding Ashura. O youth, hear me, my tragedy, when you mourn and remember. Hear my story, hear my glory, and help me live forever. O youth, when you recall me and for me weep, the lessons of my story in your tears keep. I saw my uncle alone and wouldn't sleep. I tell you, the tears he'd shed, angels would weep. Feeling guilty, my mother Ramla saw me take Hassan's armor and shield. She cried for me, none could make me throw down my sword and yield. O youth, know by two names I was left in awe. I am young, but I can't explain the things I saw. For years for a man named Ali, tears would pour. The pride of his name every man near me wore. I saw a pride that never died. We were the sons of Ali. In awe of us, they all loved us. And this every day I'd see. Today's my day to be known as Qasim the slain. On that day, my uncle taught me, live like Ali, die like Hussein. This is Al-Qasim ibn al-Hassan, the child who was at just the beginning of his journey through life. He was a role model to every adult and youth, for he had manners and made sacrifices for Islam and the nation, for the sake of protecting our sanctuaries and honor. It is said that Qasim, on the day of Ashura, went up to Abu Abdullah and asked him if he would be among the companions who will be the shuhada. أبا عبد الله أست القاسم فقال له الحسين يا ولدي قاسم كيف تجد طعم الموت. My son Qasim, how do you view death? Al-Qasim responded يا عما والله الموت بين يديك عندي أحلى من العسل. والله
by Allah, my uncle, death between your blessed hands is sweeter than honey to me. But one would ask how? How could a child see death sweeter than honey? The answer, my brothers and sisters, is one's belief and worldview. If you believe that death is the end, you will fear it. If you believe that death is the end, you will be afraid. But if you believe it's a continuation from a world to another world, you won't fear it. If you've prepared for the hereafter with your deeds and righteousness, you won't fear it. You only fear it if you've done anything that makes your hereafter a torment. This is Qasim, a young boy, but he knows that sacrificing for the Imam of his time is a heavenly opportunity. After the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah's companions, Qasim asked Abu Abdullah if he could fight his enemies, but the Imam refused many times. After the martyrdom of Al-Ayn and Akbar, the sons of Ja'far and the sons of Muslim ibn Aqil, Qasim could not handle what Imam al-Hussein was going through alone, and he said, hearing Abu Abdullah saying on the plains of Karbala, is there not anyone who shall support us? Is there not anyone who shall protect the household of Rasulullah? Is there not anyone who is afraid of Allah? Is there not anyone who shall ask Allah to aid us? A voice was heard. Imam al-Hussein's nephew Qasim saying, I'm here for you, Uncle Abu Abdullah. The Imam said to him, my nephew, you're the trust from my brother. I don't want to expose you to the strikes of the spears. Qasim then said, Uncle, Amma, I can't bear staying alive while my cousins and brothers are massacred and see you standing here all alone. Abu Abdullah said to him, my son Qasim, I see you marching to death with your own 2 feet. Qasim replied, how can I know when you stand there amongst the enemies on your own without a supporter? It is said that Qasim then fell to his uncle's feet in his hands, begging to be permitted to battle, but the Imam still denied his permission repeatedly. So Qasim sat on the ground, and then it is said he remembered that his father left a note for him in his right shoulder of his clothing. He pulled it out and he read, from his father Imam al-Hassan, my son Qasim, I request you, if you see your uncle lonely in Karbala and the enemies have surrounded him, then don't spare the chance to fight the enemies of Rasulullah, and don't fail to sacrifice your soul for them. Don't fail to sacrifice your soul for Hussein, and every time he denies you permission to battle, go back to him and insist on battling until you attain the eternal happiness. Qasim went back to Abu Abdullah. He showed him the message. Imam al-Hussein looked at Qasim with tears going down his face. He remembered the day of Imam al-Hassan's death when he was speaking with the pain of his poisoned liver. It is said that Imam al-Hussein approached Qasim. He hugged him while they both shed tears. The Imam then took a deep breath and then took Qasim to the town. There came a time where Qasim ran to his mother Ramla. He was happy and he said to her, Mother, Imam al-Hussein has allowed me to go. Ramla held her son closely. What would this mother of this young teenager be thinking in this moment? Getting ready to bid her son farewell. Those of you who are mothers will understand how difficult it is to be away from your child. But imagine sending off your child to their martyrdom. Imam al-Hussein took Qasim to the town. He brought the box of Imam al-Hassan's possessions, the Imam's clothes, his turban and his sword. Some stories say that Ramla with her own 2 hands helped prepare Qasim for battle with Imam al-Hussein. These are the Zainabiyat, the women of Islam, the women who send their own children to defend honor, to defend the religion, to defend the Imam of their time. Qasim bid everybody farewell as he hurried to the battlefield. The enemies wondered who this brave boy was. Qasim yells out, In tankiruni فأنا نجل الحسن صدق النبي المجتبى والمؤتمن هذا حسين كالأسير المرتهن بين أناس لا سقوا صوب المزون. If you deny me, know I am the son of Hassan, the chosen and the trusted prophet's grandson. And this is Hussein, like a captive captured amongst the family that were never watered. Qasim goes to the battlefield and begins fighting the enemies with his weapon. A narration from one of the people said, Qasim ibn al-Hasan came out to us carrying a sword, his face glowing like the moon, wearing nothing but a shirt and some clothing, and upon his feet some sandals. It is also said, were you to look through the entirety of all of history, you would not find a young boy like this one. 70 men stood before him as he wears a shirt and clothing, and yet no Arab would approach him until they put on their armor, to a point that the men couldn't be identified because of how much armor they wore, and nothing could be seen of them but their eyes. He didn't care much about the enemies, and when his sandal untied, he bent over to fix them, and an enemy of Allah attacked him. This enemy said, may the sins of every Arab be upon me if I don't break his mother and his uncle's hearts over him. The narrator instantly replied, Hamid tells him, do you not see that this face of the boy is like the moon? Leave him, it is enough what you have done with him. He refused and said, no, I will not be satisfied until I strike him. It is said that while Qasim was fighting, his sandal became untied. He bent down to fix his sandal on the battlefield. Ajarakum Allah. This enemy of Allah ran up to Qasim and struck him on the head. فوقع قاسم على وجهه. Qasim fell to the ground on Karbala on his face and shouted, Amma ya Amma Aba Abdullah adrikni. Uncle Hussein, help me. Qasim was carving the ground with his hands and feet in pain. Imam al-Hussein hurried to his nephew. Imagine the scene. It is said that the Imam began checking the hands and feet of Qasim in this state. The soul of Qasim had departed on the plains of Karbala. It is said that the Imam says to his nephew, فقال الحسين يعز والله على عمك أن تدعوه فلا يجيبك أو يجيبك فلا يعينك أو يعينك فلا يغني عنك. Qasim, it is difficult that you call for your uncle and he doesn't respond, or he responds but he is unable to help you, or he helps you but he's unable to alleviate your pain. May those who have killed you be distant from Allah. Those whom your father and grandfather will be enemies of. By Allah, this is a day there is none but little support. It is said that Abu Abdullah bent over and put his head in Qasim's chest, hugging him. He looked at him and said, Bunay Qasim, Bunay Qasim. Abu Aba Abdullah took Qasim back to the tent. It is said that he laid him down next to his own son Ali al-Akbar. On a hand, he looks at Ali al-Akbar, and then he says, Wa Aliyah. And on another hand, he looks at Qasim's face and yells out, Wa Qasima. Imagine Ramla, the mother of Qasim, seeing her son in this condition. What would a mother do if she was to see her son like this? What would she do? Allahu Akbar. What would Qasim be saying to his mother during his shahada? Yumma dhikrini بنت مرزايا فشباب يما ذكريني بنت مرزايا فشباب من العرس محروم وحنيتي دايم المصاب شمعة شبابي من يطفوها حنيتي دمي والكفن ضايع التراب Mother, remember me when I'm wearing passes and you see me. From my wedding I'm held, my suit is my blood, and in it my body you'll find. The candle of my youth, they blew it silent. My suit is my blood and my shroud, and I'm buried inside the ground. May Allah have mercy upon those who yell out, Wa Qasima, Wa Qasima, Wa Qasima, Wa Husayna, Ya Wa Ghariba, Ya Wa Madluma, Wa Shahida. Hussein, Hussein. Everyone send your salams to the Imam. Ya Hussein, سلام من قلوب أنت فيها يا حسين سلام من قلوب أنت فيها يا حسين لك الأرواح طرا نفتديها يا حسين peace be upon you from all the hearts you are in يا حسين peace be upon you from all the hearts you are in لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وسيعلم الذين ظلموا على بيت محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون To Allah we belong and to Him is our return, and soon the aggressors will know what change their affairs will take, and the end result will be for the righteous, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, in the name of Hussein, by the right of Hussein, by the thirst of Hussein, we ask you to forgive our sins. We ask you to allow us to shed tears and make a change through these majalis. We ask you to give us a good end on the path of truth. We ask you to fill our hearts with the love of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. We ask you to cure our sick ones, to forgive our deceased, Ya Allah. We ask you to bring victory and relief to the oppressed all around the world, specifically those in Palestine, Ya Allah. We ask you to hasten the return of our Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, and to make us amongst his loyal supporters, Ya Allah. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. ثانية على الحب الزهراء صلى على محمد وآل محمد. Inshallah, we'll do a short latmiya from our seats. I'm going to need everybody's help with your voices and the beats. Inshallah, it's a very specific beat. صلى على محمد وآل محمد. This latmiya in honor of Qasim ibn al-Hasan alayhi salam was written by one of our brothers in the community, Yusuf Baydoun. If you guys can gift him a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'm going to need everybody's help, inshallah, for the chorus. My father told me someday I will die. Wear my armor for me under Hussein's sky. Under Hussein's sky, everyone. My father told me someday I will die. Wear my armor for me under Hussein's sky. Under Hussein's sky. From your early youth, your brother knew he would leave this world mourning for you, mourning for you. From your early youth, your brother knew he would leave this world mourning for you, mourning for you. So he lived his life watching over you. As his final wish, he'd leave me to you, he'd leave me to you. So my uncle, please, my father's waiting for me to go back, fighting for your name, fighting for your name. My father told me someday I will die. Wear my armor for me under Hussein's sky, under Hussein's sky. This letter he gave me tied around my arm says my purpose here is keeping you from harm, is keeping you from harm. My mother Ramla dressed me in armor. In my hand she placed my father Hassan's sword, my father Hassan's sword. My mother Ramla dressed me in armor. In my hand she placed my father Hassan's sword, my father Hassan's sword. When they attack me and stain me in my blood, no, I won't be scared. I'm going to Baba, I'm going to Baba. My father told me someday I will die. Wear my armor for me under Hussein's sky, under Hussein's sky. My nephew Qasim, by your father's eyes, how will you leave and make your mother cry, make your mother cry? From my older brother, you are all I have, but I'll let you go if you fill my wish, if you fill my wish. When you see my brother, grab his holy hand, kiss it from me, and give my salam, and give my salams. My father told me someday I will die. Wear my armor for me under Hussein's sky, under Hussein's sky. My uncle Hussein, now's the time has come. My uncle Hussein, now the time has come. I'll give it my all. On the sand I'll fall, on the sand I'll fall. Wipe your tears, I swear that we'll meet again. You won't be alone. They wait for us both, they wait for us both. Prophet Muhammad has both our gardens filled with fruits and sweets. My father told me, my father told me, my father told me, someday I will die. Wear my armor for me under Hussein's sky, under Hussein's sky. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله. السلام